In this video, we're going to talk about my recommended procedures for testing a condenser. Okay, now we've already tested the thermostat, and if you haven't watched that video, please do that. And we've already done some air handler diagnosis. Okay, we know that our indoor blower's motor is running. We know our air handler's in decent shape. So at this point, we're going to move outside and test our condenser. Okay, the first step we want to do when we start this is you need to test and see if L1 and L2, that's the two wires coming into the condenser, has proper supply voltage. Okay, if it doesn't, don't go any further inside the condenser. You want to check and make sure the breaker's it's in on position. Okay, if it's not, is the breaker blown? Okay, if the breaker's blown, you need to see why. Okay, I would probably reset it and see if it blows again. Okay, if it is not blown and you don't have supply voltage and the breaker's turned on, you have to call an electrician to fix the line voltage. Okay, if you have a disconnect that's in an on position, breaker that's in an on position, and if you don't have power, okay, an electrician has to get involved in most states. Okay, your AC license, especially in Florida, only covers from the disconnect to the unit. Don't go back further because it's not covered, and you could end up with some liability insurance issues. Okay, once you have proper line voltage, okay, you need to come down and look because we have the system, remember, from our thermostat, we have this system in cooling. Okay, is the condenser fan running? That's your first question. Is the fan running? Okay, if the fan is not running, is the contactor pulled in? Okay, if the contactor's not pulled in, you're going to check and see if you have 24 volts across C and Y. And there should be a little bit over 24 volt. That's why the little plus sign in front of it. I'm not looking for positive or negative. This is AC. What I'm looking for is, do you have slightly over 24 volts? Okay. If you do not have 24 volts, you need to once again check the wiring between the thermostat and the air handler and your outdoor unit. Okay. There's a wiring issue. If your thermostat's calling, and you don't have proper voltage across that contactor because the contactor's pulled in by C and Y. Okay, so you fix your wiring, start the process over again. If there is not, or if there is 24 volts across C and Y, okay, at the contactor terminals, replace the contactor. Okay, now, you may find that there's some pressure switches in here, okay, that is preventing this from opening. We'll deal with that in another video. Okay, but the question is, at the contactor, that's the two sides of the contactor coil, do you have 24 plus volts? Okay, if you do and the contactor's not pulling in, replace the contactor. Okay, then go back and start your procedure all over again. Is the condenser fan running? Is the fan amperage under the RLA? The run level amp should be tagged on either the fan motor or the side of the unit, on the nameplate of the unit. Is the fan amperage under the RLA? Okay, if it's not, come over here to the condenser fan test. And again, if the contactor's pulled in and the fan isn't running, go do your condenser fan test. Is the compressor running? Okay, if it's not and your fan is running, okay, because they're on the same circuits, if the compressor's not running and your fan is running, you need to go test your compressor. Okay, I recommend doing that regardless, but you need to go find out why the compressor's not running. Is the compressor amperage showing load? Okay, most compressors are running plus 5 amps, okay, under load. If the compressor's only running at 1 or 2 amps, you need to go test the compressor. Okay, if the compressor amperage is too high, go test the compressor. Okay. If the compressor's running, our next question is the suction line cool and is the liquid line warm? Notice we haven't put gauges on this system yet. If the suction line is cool and the liquid line is not cool and the liquid line is not warm, we're going to attach gauges. We're going to talk more about the refrigeration side of this in another video. Okay, but once we've attached our gauges, is low side over 50% lower than the high side pressure? In other words, I want to see a very large pressure differential between the low side and the high side. If it's not, test the compressor valves. If the valves are good, okay, we're going to move on. If the valves are not good in the compressor, we're going to replace that compressor and we're going to start our whole procedure over again. Okay, so if everything is good on the refrigeration side, we're going to take the temperature, the suction liquids line. Okay, now you need to remember from your air handler, is the system a TXV or a fixed metering device? If it's a TXV, we're going to look at subcooling. Okay, if it's a fixed metering device or anything on a refrigeration system, not an air conditioning system, if it has a receiver, we're going to look at superheat. Okay, so is subcooling proper? Okay, if not, okay, we want to look at, we're going to do air side diagnosis. Okay, we got to look at airflow, but we also need to look at, is the condenser coil clean? This is part of the condenser. If the condenser coil is not clean, clean that coil. Okay, same thing on the superheat. Again, we're going to look at air side diagnostic, but we're always going to look at that condenser coil. Okay, if everything is clean, and if your metering devices are working properly, if your air side diagnostic is good, we'll talk about that in another video, then we have to deal with adjusting the refrigerant charge. Okay? If the superheat is proper, if the subcooling is proper, we need to look and see if there's a temperature drop across the filter dryer. The easiest way to do this, A, is look for frost on the filter dryer, and B, take a temperature reading from the inside of the filter dryer to the outside. If there's a temperature difference, that means your filter dryer is clogged. Okay, change the filter dryer. If there's no temperature difference, problem's not on the refrigeration side. Okay, got to look closer. So again, with our condenser diagnostics, we start off with the basic things. Okay, are the fan motors working properly? Is the contactor pulling in? Is the fan amperage decent? Is the compressor running? Okay, every one of these, if there's a no answer, we're going to further test the spot, test the component. Okay, then we finally look at temperatures. Okay, you don't have to attach your gauges if the suction line is cool and the temperature and the liquid line is warm. Okay, we can do everything with temperatures. Once you attach your gauges, you've taken the possibility of allowing contaminants into the refrigeration system. You don't always need to do that. Okay, if everything else is working fine, then don't do it. Okay, always check to see if the coil's dirty as well. And you have to actually look inside. Don't just look at the outside. Look at the inside portion of the coil.